I've never been the paranoid type, but the car behind me immediately gave me a creepy feeling. It was something about the headlights that reminded me of old-fashioned, oversized glasses with thick frames. You know, the kind doctors used to wear when they examined patients. The light they emitted had a weird, yellowish tint instead of being bright. The car's speed was off too. It didn't slow down or speed up, just stayed at the same pace. Sometimes it got closer, sometimes it fell behind a bit, but it was always right there behind me. I tried to shake off the idea that it was intentionally following me. I mean, I live in the city center, so it wouldn't be too surprising if it was headed in the same direction. Still, I couldn't help but keep checking my rearview mirror. Maybe it was just exhaustion from work messing with my head, or maybe being alone all the time was making me a bit paranoid. Anyway, I kept driving and tried not to pay too much attention to the car. I made a right turn at an intersection, and it kept going straight. That was it, I thought. I could finally go home and get some sleep. It was a Saturday night, the city was full of rowdy drunks and girls dressed to the nines. But partying wasn't on my mind. All I wanted was to crash in bed. I dealt with so many annoying customers at work that day, I didn't need any more excitement. I parked in front of my house and glanced down the street. And there it was, that unmistakable headlight with its glasses-like frame, winking at me as if to say, "You thought you could shake me off, huh?" My stomach clenched like a fist. The logical part of my brain couldn't come up with an explanation. It really was following me. I slowly got out of the car, gripping my phone tightly in case I needed to call the police. No one stepped out of that strange vehicle, and I couldn't even see what it looked like through the dark windshield. It was just darkness staring back at me. I rushed up to the first floor, desperately searching for my key. A chilling sensation crawled up my spine, as if any moment, someone would reach out and grab my shoulder or silently swing a baseball bat at me. Thankfully, nothing of the sort occurred. I managed to enter the house successfully, meticulously securing both the lower and upper locks of the door. Collapsing onto a chair in the hallway, I fixated my gaze on the central glass strip of the front door, its transparency dimmed, allowing faint illumination from the stairwell lights to seep through. I was convinced that any moment, a shadowy figure would emerge, gradually obfuscating the feeble light. But who would be following me? The more rational part of my mind interjected. I wasn't wealthy or important, and aside from basketball, I led a mundane existence. I hadn't stolen or harmed anyone, and as far as I knew, I had no enemies. In my desperation to alleviate the overwhelming solitude, I yearned to call someone, anyone. However, I found myself utterly devoid of companionship. My relatives resided overseas, with whom I had little interaction, and I lacked friends to confide in. Both my parents had passed away, my father tragically in a car accident on May 18, 2 years ago, and my mother succumbed to a heart attack exactly a year later on the same date. Since then, my life has revolved solely around work, confined to a solitary existence in a ground-floor studio apartment. This marked the first instance I longed for someone to share my fear with. No apparition materialized beyond the translucent glass strip of the door, gradually assuaging my anxiety. I decided to take a hasty shower to compose myself. Upon returning to the kitchen, my worst fear materialized before me, a shadowy figure. At first glance, it resembled the notorious killer from the movie Scream, donning a black jacket with a distinct white patch on its face. Yet, unlike the infamous knife-wielding murderer, this visitor lacked the characteristic black eye sockets. Their entire visage was ghostly white, as much as I could discern through the frosted glass. Blood gushed from my legs, a torrent so rapid it bordered on pain. My pupils must have dilated like a cat transfixed by a horror movie on YouTube. Surprisingly, my legs didn't give way beneath me, nor did my bowels betray me at that moment. Truth be told, I only possess a hazy recollection of the entire ordeal. All I know is that neither I nor the figure lurking beyond the door made a move for what felt like an eternity. Gradually, a shred of rationality returned. The door was locked, granting me precious time to summon the police should the need arise. Hastily retrieving my phone from the table, I dialed the emergency number. The dispatcher promptly answered, and I informed them of the unsettling individual who had trailed me home and now loitered outside my door. Fear gripped me as it seemed like the person was attempting to force their way in. I chose to omit the details of the ghostly white face and the peculiar, tunic-like attire. I can't explain why exactly. Perhaps I feared sounding foolish. I provided the address, and the dispatcher assured me that 2 patrol officers would arrive shortly. Only when the blaring sirens grew near did the figure vanish. Even its disappearance held an eerie quality, leaving me uncertain if it retreated from the door or dissolved into thin air like a spectre. The 2 patrol officers arrived promptly, conducting a thorough interrogation and questioning neighbors about any suspicious individuals they may have seen in the vicinity. Yet, no one had witnessed anything of note. Their attention then turned to me, inquiring about my alcohol or substance consumption. I was prepared, offering to blow into a breathalyzer or provide a blood sample without hesitation. I even permitted them to search my apartment. Eventually, they bid me farewell, assuring me that they would keep a watchful eye on the area. Once again, I found myself alone. The figure did not reappear that day, but something else petrified me even more: the date displayed on the wall calendar. It was May 18th, the anniversary of my parents' death. The pieces of the puzzle snapped into place with a dizzying swiftness. If my father had also been pursued by this enigmatic figure in the peculiar vehicle, it would explain his uncharacteristic speeding. And if it had manifested before my mother, it could justify her untimely heart attack, which seemed improbable given her healthy lifestyle. It was as simple as it was inconceivable. I had a trusted colleague, the only person who was really close to me, whom I felt comfortable confiding in. After work, we sat down for a beer at a local pub, and I poured out the unsettling experiences that had plagued me, delving into the realm of mysticism. However, he, being a rational thinker, dismissed any possibility of supernatural phenomena. "Nah, it's probably just a mix-up," he said. "Maybe he came to the wrong address, looking for someone else." Though he briefly pondered the date, he brushed it off as a highly unlikely coincidence. Despite his efforts to sway my beliefs, I remained resolute. So, one day, I stepped into an esoteric shop, hoping to find answers. The owner, a small and delicate woman, listened intently to my story. She suggested that it might be related to a demon, though not her area of expertise. Nevertheless, she gave me the contact information of someone who could possibly help. I called the person right there in the store, and a husky-voiced woman, clearly a heavy smoker, answered. After a moment of hesitation, we arranged an appointment, and she provided me with her address. A few days later, I visited the mysterious individual. A woman with wild, badger-like hair and a home adorned with dragon patterns welcomed me. As anticipated, the apartment was filled with the scent of smoky incense. We engaged in conversation, and I was relieved to see genuine interest in her eyes, unlike the skepticism I had encountered before. It felt like sharing a unique medical case with a fascinated doctor. She probed for more details, particularly intrigued by the significance of the dates. Our discussion revealed new layers of the puzzle, bringing me closer to understanding the inexplicable events that had unfolded. The demonologist lady had described the entity as a soul-changer demon, and she even mentioned a name, something like Onyx. She explained that since it hadn't succeeded in claiming my parents' souls, it was now tormenting mine. She sternly warned me never to open the door for him under any circumstances, not that I had any intention to do so. To aid me in my battle, she handed me a bottle containing a fine, red powder. She instructed me to pour it out every day in front of my door for a month. Before parting ways, she emphasized that if I sensed anything suspicious, I must inform her, as it could be a demon attempting to manipulate my emotions. I left a substantial sum of money with her, but in the end, I was grateful for seeking her assistance. Following the demonologist's advice, I diligently spread the powder in a neat line before my door. That night, I managed to sleep a little more peacefully. However, in the subsequent days, an overwhelming rage began to consume me. I couldn't pinpoint the exact cause, but I found myself growing increasingly irritable and bored with everyone around me. This eventually led to a heated argument with my boss over a trivial matter. The memory of the entire altercation is hazy, clouded by my muddled state of mind. I was promptly fired. Back at home, still trembling with anger, I couldn't decipher the true source of my fury. I briefly contemplated reaching out to the demonologist woman, but instead, I drowned my sorrows in a bottle of vodka. That night, I neglected to sprinkle the protective powder. In the dead of night, I awoke to relentless pounding on my door. It echoed like a slow, methodical drumbeat, each strike fueling my anger further. Who was this imbecile relentlessly knocking at such an ungodly hour? Enveloped in aggression, my entire body tingling with tension, I resolved to confront the intruder head-on, prepared to unleash my fury. Without uttering a word, I hurriedly turned the key and swung open the door. But I was rendered speechless by what I saw before me. There stood the demon itself. Or rather, it hovered in one place, a mass of black substance resembling a voluminous cloak, yet composed of dense, soot-colored smoke. It barely stirred, pulsating slowly and rhythmically, as if sighing. What truly struck me was its face, or whatever approximation of a face it possessed. I found myself utterly incapable of fixing my gaze upon it. Despite my desperate efforts, my eyes simply slid off its cloudy whiteness, as though repelled by an invisible force. In the next instant, the demon glided towards me, and a bone-chilling coldness enveloped me. Darkness engulfed my senses, and I lost consciousness. The events that transpired afterwards remain a blur in my memory, but I was able to piece together the fragments. When I regained consciousness, I found myself sprawled on the kitchen counter, my limbs tingling with numbness. Scattered before me was the red powder, strewn across the floor. From this, I surmised that I must have instinctively seized the bottle of red dust from the mirrored cabinet and unleashed it upon the demon, driving it away. It was an impulsive act, driven by sheer survival. I sought out the demonologist woman and recounted the harrowing ordeal to her. She regarded me with a mixture of awe and relief, proclaiming me remarkably fortunate. She performed a peculiar ritual, purportedly aimed at purifying me of any lingering demonic influence. In addition, she imparted invaluable advice, stressing the importance of avoiding solitude as it made the demon's task easier. Since then, I have taken up residence in a shared apartment, surrounded by the company of several other young individuals. Though there are moments when I long for solitude, I recognize that this communal setting ultimately serves as a shield against the malevolent forces that once plagued me.